I didn't realize how much I needed him until the monitors started beeping. That sound, sharp and sudden, sliced right through whatever numbness I'd been pretending to wear like armor. I didn't move at first, just stared at the machine, like I could will the numbers to fix themselves if I sat still enough, quiet enough. The nurse came in, calm, practiced, pressing buttons, checking wires. I couldn't hear what she was saying. My ears were full of blood and that steady voice in my head whispering, "Don't do this. Don't leave." She left, said it was fine, just a false alarm. He didn't wake up. I looked at him like I was afraid to blink. His face looked tired, not the kind of tired from running drills or pulling all-nighters, but something deeper, like his body was begging for rest. And he finally listened. Jonah never listens to his body. Too stubborn, too good at pretending pain isn't there until it's loud enough to knock him over, which apparently is what it took this time. He said it was chest tightness, probably just stress. Said it like he says everything, offhand, like the world couldn't possibly touch him. I made a joke. Guess we're old now, huh? Time to get matching pill organizers. He laughed. Didn't meet my eyes. There's a paper coffee cup next to me. Still full, cold now. I picked it up earlier just to have something to do with my hands. Didn't drink it. I couldn't taste anything. I keep thinking I should be used to this kind of fear. You grow up fearing so many things: rejection, failure, being seen too closely. You think you'd be good at it by now. But nothing prepares you for the way your stomach caves in when someone you love might not wake up. And yeah, I haven't said that word out loud. Not to him, not even to myself, really. Love feels like a trick word, like saying it out loud will ruin whatever we've got. And what we've got, it's not nothing. We've known each other forever. He knows how I take my coffee. I know when he's lying about being fine. We've lived whole lives inside glances and stupid inside jokes. I've built a whole world around the idea that I'd rather have this almost, this maybe, than risk it and lose him. But when those monitors screamed, I wasn't thinking about how careful I'd been. I was thinking, please don't die before I get brave enough to tell the truth. He shifted just now, turned his head toward the wall like he's dreaming something warm. His lips moved. No sound. I almost said something. But what? I'm scared? Don't do that again? I think I love you and it's ruining me? Instead, I whispered, you always sleep like you don't owe the world anything. It wasn't what I meant to say, but it was the only truth that didn't terrify me. The room is quiet again, just the beep of his heart and the hum of something mechanical I don't know the name of. And me, still here, still watching him, still pretending I don't want to reach over and trace the shape of his hand just to remind myself he's real. Maybe that's the worst part. I know how to love him in silence. I've been doing it for years. I didn't hear the first call, not because the phone was off or far away. It was right there on the counter, buzzing next to the jar of instant coffee I pretend I don't use. I just didn't look. Mornings are sacred, that's what I tell myself. A lie wrapped in logic. Same mug, same playlist, 2 eggs, medium soft. No rush, no surprises, no space for fear. I cracked the eggs too hard today. The yolk bled too fast. I scraped the shells from the pan like it meant something. It didn't. Not really. But I still stood there staring at the stove like it might tell me what was off. That's how it happens. Your body knows before your brain does. A second buzz. Then silence. Then another. I wiped my hands on the towel I never wash and finally flipped the screen over. Unknown number. Voicemail. Something in my chest did that quiet thud, the kind you feel more than hear. Not panic. Not yet. Just dread dressed as nothing. I don't check voicemails. Another habit, another layer of distance I call peace. But I played this one. Hi, this is St. Vincent's. We have a patient here under the name Jonah Rivera. The rest didn't matter. That was the moment. That name, his name, in someone else's mouth. Sterile, professional. I pressed the phone to my chest like that could rewind it, like I hadn't just spent 20 minutes stirring eggs and pretending he wasn't real. I didn't call back right away. I made the eggs anyway. Ate 2 bites. Rinsed the pan. Then I sat down at the table, the one he helped me build when we were 23 and broke, and didn't move for a long time. The phone was still on the counter. I thought, he's fine. He's probably fine. I thought, I'll go, but it's just to be safe. I thought a lot of things. Most of them were lies I'd told myself so many times they sounded like comfort. I still left the house in 10 minutes. Didn't even change my shirt. I swear, if you order the exact same thing again. Jonah gave me that shit-eating grin, the one he always used when he knew he was annoying me on purpose. What? A turkey club is a classic. You're a walking sandwich cliche. He shrugged like it was a compliment. At least I'm consistent. We were tucked into the corner booth at Baxter's. Same place we always met when we needed something casual, not serious, just sandwiches and sarcasm and pretending neither of us had anything too heavy in our chests. Jonah stirred his iced tea with a straw, aimless circles. His sleeves were rolled up, forearms marked with faint scrapes from work, the kind that said, I've been in the field again, but don't ask. I didn't. You know, he said, mouth full. You could try smiling once in a while. You're starting to look like your apartment, minimalist and emotionally unavailable. I rolled my eyes. I have throw pillows now. He laughed. Loud. Warm. That laugh, the one that cracked something open every time I heard it. I didn't join in. Just watched him. Watched the way he tilted his head back when he laughed, like the sound needed space. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did. He never looked at me too long. The food came. He stole one of my fries like he always did. I let him, like I always did, and we talked about nothing for an hour, which was actually everything. There was a moment, maybe 10 seconds, when he wiped hot sauce off his lip with the edge of his thumb, then glanced at me like he'd said something wrong. Except he hadn't said anything at all. Just that look, that flicker of quiet under the charm. I looked away first. Safe. Easy. Now, sitting in this cold hospital chair, I can't stop replaying that moment. How close we were, how much I didn't say, how loud his laugh was, and how quiet it is now. You're not 30 yet, I said. Jonah snorted, grabbed the sugar, dumped too much into his coffee. Tell that to my knees. I stood up too fast this morning and thought I saw the light. I smirked, rolled my eyes, didn't look at his face too long. That's just being dramatic, or dehydrated. He tapped his chest lightly. Felt tight, too. Probably nothing. Then he took a sip like he hadn't just said that, like it was a joke, like always, and I let it be one. He wore tired well, in that same easy way he wore everything. Still smiling, still the guy who knew how to make a silence feel like a shared secret instead of a wall. So I didn't ask more. I told him he was getting old. He laughed, and I didn't think about it again until the phone rang, or I did, in the way you think about something just enough to shove it down. A tightness in my chest hours later that I blamed on the leftover coffee, on not sleeping right, on anything but fear. It was after midnight when the call came. Number I didn't recognize. Voice I didn't want to hear. Jonah. Collapsed. ER. Chest pains. They're running tests. The nurse's voice was steady. Practiced. She asked if I was family. I said, I'm the emergency contact. It felt like a lie and the truth all at once. I didn't say much on the drive. Didn't cry. Didn't breathe too deep. Just drove fast, stupid fast, through red lights I pretended were yellow, every second louder than the last. Every stupid little thing we said earlier, playing on a loop in my head. His laugh, his hand grazing mine when he reached for the salt, that joke. About getting old. About light. I should have asked, I should have known. Now I was sitting in a plastic chair outside the trauma unit, replaying the sound of him saying, probably nothing, and me, laughing. Because if I let myself feel what it could be now, I might break, and breaking isn't helpful. So I stayed still and waited and told myself it's probably nothing, even though I didn't believe it anymore. The fluorescent lights made everything look colder, even the beige chairs, even my hands. I'd been sitting there for, I don't know, an hour, 2. There was a clock above the nurse's station, but I couldn't look at it. Watching time move felt like daring something to go wrong. Someone coughed. A kid cried behind a plastic curtain. A phone rang and stopped. I stared at the wall across from me like it might offer a better version of the night. One where I had said something when he told me he felt off. One where I didn't laugh and change the subject. He said he was just tired. I said, you're 30, not 90. He smiled. I remember that too well. A nurse finally came over, soft-voiced, like bad news was still on the table. She said, Jonah's stable. He's resting. You can see him now if you want. If I want, I nodded, stood too fast. My legs didn't quite feel like mine. The room they brought me to was small, dim, the kind of quiet that hums, machines breathing in place of him. He looked still, like sleep but not his kind. Jonah never slept like that. He always curled into himself, one arm flung over his eyes. This was too still, There was a chair pulled up beside him that someone had set it there, assuming I'd sit. I did. The machines beeped every few seconds. I counted them. Anything to not think about how pale he looked, how small. I wanted to say something. Out loud. I didn't. Instead, I pressed my thumb into the palm of my hand until it hurt. I used to do that as a kid when I needed to hold back tears. I sat like that for a while, long enough that the coffee I grabbed on the way in went cold beside me. Didn't drink it, didn't move. Just listened to the beeping and hoped it wouldn't stop. He twitched once in his sleep, a little jerk of the shoulder like he was dreaming of falling. I didn't breathe until the monitor beeped the same rhythm again. The nurse said he'd be out for hours. Said it like that should have made me feel better. Like sedation meant control, safety. But nothing about this feels safe. The chair beside his bed was too low. My knees ached, but I didn't move. My hand kept finding the edge of the seat cushion and curling there like I was holding on. I watched his chest rise, then fall, then rise again. I couldn't stop counting. It used to be so easy, being near him. We'd fall asleep on the couch mid-movie or walk home in the rain and not say anything about how soaked we were. Everything used to feel unconscious. Now every breath I take feels like it might say too much. There was a scratch on the back of his hand. Probably from the IV tape. I stared at it like it meant something. Like it gave me permission to care a little too much. I almost said his name, just to hear it. To feel how it would land in the room now that everything's changed. Or maybe nothing has. Maybe I'm just finally seeing it for what it is. I wanted to tell him I was scared, that he scared me, that I'm still mad at him for brushing off the chest pain and joking about turning 30 like he's already ancient. He laughed that morning like he didn't know I'd remember every word. I opened my mouth and closed it again because what if he hears it, even half asleep? What if he doesn't? The beeping stayed steady. The kind of steady that feels cruel, like it doesn't care how hard I'm trying not to fall apart. I'm right here, I whispered, but even that felt too loud. He didn't stir this time. I sat back, hands in my lap, breath shallow, holding it, still, just in case. I hadn't seen it in years, that buried behind a cracked rice cooker and a mug I never used, the old thermos, still dented on the side from when Jonah dropped it in the quad. I remember the soup leaking, how he tried to laugh it off even though he was 2 hours deep into a panic spiral over biochem. It still smelled faintly like ginger and lentils. Or maybe that was just in my head. I stood at the sink for a while, just holding it. The metal was cold, lighter than I remembered, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. I washed it slowly, scrubbed the inside 3 times, even though it was already clean. Not because it needed it. Just because. I didn't plan the soup. It just happened. I had the ingredients. I remembered how he used to say it tasted like home, said it made his lungs feel bigger, easier, and maybe that's what I wanted to give him now. Something easier. The broth simmered while I cleaned the kitchen counter in silence. Didn't turn on music, didn't check my phone, just listened to the bubbling, stirred, tasted, stirred again. I filled the thermos and stood with it for a second, cap twisted on, still warm against my palm, still dented on the side. At the hospital, I didn't say anything, just placed it gently on the tray beside his bed. He was half asleep, lids fluttering, didn't open them, but his fingers twitched, like maybe he knew. I didn't stay long, didn't wait for thanks. Just sat for a minute and watched the way his chest rose and fell. Slow now. Steady. Before I left, I reached out once. Not to touch him. Just to move the thermos a little closer, so when he woke up it'd be the first thing he saw. I didn't say anything when I walked in. The lights were low again, the ones they keep on overnight, like the room was trying not to wake itself. Jonah was half sitting, head tilted toward the window, eyes closed. Not quite asleep. Not quite here. I didn't knock. I didn't clear my throat. Just came in with the thermos, still warm from the walkover. There was a plastic container on his tray already, the kind of soup that comes in industrial beige, half eaten. He hadn't touched it since earlier. I could see the line where the spoon dragged through and stopped. I set mine down beside it. The thermos. Old. Dented. Still smelling faintly like college. Still smelling like him. In a weird, nostalgic way. Late nights, half sick, I curled up on my couch with my blanket, asking if it was okay to stay again. It clicked softly as it touched the tray. That was it. That was the sound. He stirred, turned his head a little, eyes opened, slow and cloudy. Landed on the thermos, didn't say anything, just stared, and then, finally, "Is that?" I didn't answer. He blinked again, like he wasn't sure if he was dreaming, like maybe it was the meds, or maybe he remembered too. Finals week, that one brutal winter, my tiny kitchen steaming up with ginger and lentils while he coughed through calculus notes. He didn't touch it. Not yet. Just looked. Then closed his eyes again. No smile, no comment, but his shoulders dropped just slightly, like something in him let go. And that was enough. It had to be. I sat in the chair beside him, pulled it a little closer, let my hand rest on the armrest between us like it just landed there. Didn't say a word the rest of the night. Didn't need to. Not then. The soup smelled the same. Even back then, cheap stock, too much garlic, canned corn because it was all I had. He called it magic, like it wasn't just a thrown together fix, like it mattered that I tried. He was soaked from the rain. Hoodie sticking to his shoulders, hair dripping down into his eyes, curled up on our busted couch like something fragile. And he laughed. God, he laughed at whatever dumb movie I had on. Mouth open, tired and easy, like he didn't know how much I was watching. I'd handed him the bowl without thinking, burned my thumb on the edge. He grinned at me like I'd done something heroic. I didn't sit next to him that night. Don't know why. Maybe I was scared to be that close. Maybe I already knew what that ache in my chest was, and I didn't want to find out how deep it went. He fell asleep holding the empty bowl in his lap. I took it, rinsed it out, left it upside down on the counter. Didn't tell him he drooled a little, just stood there for a minute, dish towel in hand, staring at the curve of his shoulder under that stupid hoodie. I remember thinking, this is going to ruin me. Because it wasn't loud. It wasn't some big romantic realization. It was quiet, slow, like the way your body gets used to pain before you even know it's there. That night never got mentioned again. Not by him, not by me. But I didn't throw out the thermos. Couldn't. It sat in my cabinet through moves, through people I tried to love, through everything we stopped saying. And when I touched it again, last night, it still smelled faintly like corn and garlic and something I never let myself want. I think I knew even back then. I just told myself I didn't. It was easier to pretend it was nothing than risk finding out it was everything. I used to lie awake in that apartment, the one on Clark Street with the crooked hallway and the windows that never shut all the way, wondering if he could hear me breathe. We had separate rooms, technically, but his was across the hall, close enough that I could see the light under his door. Some nights it stayed on too long. Some nights I almost knocked. We were 24, 2 toothbrushes in 1 cup, 1 bathroom we danced around. 3 years of living like a unit, but never naming it. That place smelled like burnt toast and Jonah's shampoo. He always left his hoodies on the back of the couch. I kept folding them, pretending it was habit. I don't know if he remembers how quiet I got that winter, the one where he got the flu and I made soup 3 times in 1 week. He called it magic and passed out on my shoulder halfway through a movie we'd already seen. I didn't move. I just let him stay there. Sometimes I'd sit on the floor of the kitchen with the fridge open, needing something, not knowing what. I wonder if he ever felt it too. The way the silence between us was full of almosts. Almost touching. Almost telling. Almost enough to break me. There was a night I dreamt he kissed me. Not even dramatically. Just like it wasn't a big deal. I woke up sweating, spent the whole day avoiding eye contact, and now I can't stop thinking about it. That apartment. That version of us. How I spent so long holding everything in, like if I said the wrong thing, he'd pack his things and leave that stupid hoodie behind. Funny. He still wears that same one, sometimes thinner now. Faded. We don't live together anymore. Haven't in years. But that version of me, the one who watched him sleep on the couch, who made soup, who never said a word, he's still here, still waiting, still hoping maybe Jonah remembers too. Night folded over the room again. The lamplight softened the sharp edges of the monitors, and Jonah's breathing was slower now, steadier. Color had returned to his face. The pale stretched thin by worry was filling in with something warmer. Relief, or maybe just rest. I sat too close, too still. My hands gripped the arms of the chair like I was holding myself together. The curve of his hand, resting easy on the blanket, pulled at me. I wanted to reach out, to brush a thumb over the crease where his knuckles bent. To say something I wasn't sure I knew how to say. The silence between us felt heavy, full of things I kept twisting around in my chest. Fear, wanting, a quiet ache that maybe this was the moment I'd let slip away. Not because he didn't want it, because I was scared of what it meant to risk it. To say it out loud and have it fall apart. I thought about the years, the nights in that old apartment, the toothbrushes side by side, the almost words that never made it past my lips. Did he remember? Did he know? Or was I the only one carrying this weight? My voice caught before it could start. I wanted to tell him how much I needed him, how the thought of losing him made the air thinner, how I'd been too afraid to admit what was true for so long, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I just watched the rise and fall of his chest, the slight twitch of his eyelashes, the way his hand curled inward like he was holding on to something I wasn't part of. I wondered if he could feel me there, like a ghost leaning close, waiting for permission. The room stayed quiet except for the slow, steady beep, and I held my breath. Because sometimes, waiting is the hardest kind of loving. I sat back down in the chair, the one I'd been stiff in all night. The dawn had crept in slow and cold through the blinds. Soft light filled the hospital room with that same quiet tension that never quite leaves. Jonah stirred, eyelids fluttering open. His gaze landed on the thermos I'd left by the side table. He cracked a half smile, the kind that tries too hard to be casual to keep everything light. "You didn't have to go all domestic on me," he said, voice rough, like he hadn't quite found it yet. Humor or something else. He glanced away fast, eyes drifting to the muted TV in the corner like it was a lifeline. I said nothing. Didn't want to mess with the fragile balance of the moment. His words hit me sharper than I expected. The joke wasn't just a joke. It was a shield, a way to keep the distance between us safe. But I stayed quiet, swallowed the sting. Let the silence stretch out. He folded the napkin beside his tray, careful, almost mechanical, like the hospital still hadn't let him forget. The thermos sat there, worn but steady. A quiet thing carrying all the words I wouldn't say. I wanted him to see it, see me, but I wasn't ready to risk more than this. So I just watched him turn back to the flickering TV, pretending nothing was different, pretending the night hadn't changed everything. And in that silence, the weight settled back. The wall went back up. But the thermos stayed. The thermos sat half forgotten on the bedside table, the faint smell of soup still hovering. I watched Jonah's eyes flicker to it, then quickly away, as if looking too long might break something fragile between us. He gave that light, almost lazy smile, the one that used to feel like home. "Soup, huh? What's next? You gonna knit me a sweater or something?" His voice was easy, but it bounced off the cold hospital walls and landed somewhere far away from me. I didn't say anything. The silence stretched out, heavy and awkward. The TV's quiet murmur filled the space like armor, some static, breaking news, something I barely heard. Jonah's gaze locked on the screen, deliberately avoiding mine. I folded the napkin in my hands, smoothing it, then crumpling it again without meaning to. That motion had become a quiet habit, something to fill the space between us when words wouldn't come. "Don't get too comfortable," Jonah said finally, eyes still glued to the flickering images. "I'm not going to let you go full nurse on me." I nodded, but it wasn't a reply. Not really. The room felt colder now, less like a place where we could share unspoken things, more like a waiting room for all the words we wouldn't say. I wanted to tell him I wasn't trying to nurse him or anything. I just wanted him to know I cared, without needing a joke to cover it up. Instead, I stayed quiet. The only sound was the TV and the soft creak of the bed. I caught a glimpse of Jonah folding the napkin next to his tray, then unfolding it again, like me, like us, trying to hold something together but never quite sure how. Maybe this was the way it had to be for now. The quiet, the half smiles, the distractions, because saying more felt too much. And neither of us was ready to risk breaking the silence. I remember that night in college like it was yesterday. Jonah, leaning back in the cramped dorm kitchen, that lazy grin playing on his lips as he flirted with whoever was unlucky enough to be passing by. Me, pretending not to notice the way his eyes softened when they caught mine just for a second before he disappeared again. Always into someone new, always just out of reach. We had this rhythm, this dance of almosts. I'd catch his hand brushing mine while we were doing dishes, and we'd freeze, like maybe if we said anything, the spell would break. So we said nothing. There was a text I wrote once, fingers trembling, message half typed. I'm tired of pretending I don't want you. I deleted it before it ever saw light. We had a pact of silence, unspoken but understood, to keep what mattered at bay, to protect ourselves from a love too loud, too real, too scary. Jonah moved from one short-lived thing to another. I kept busy with work and late-night playlists, holding back because I was scared too. Scared of losing the safest thing we had. Friendship. The way he'd laugh at my jokes like he got them more than anyone else made me almost believe I could stop wanting more. But that ache didn't go away. It just hid beneath the surface, waiting. Back then, the idea of saying how I felt impossible. We were both good at pretending that almost was enough, at pretending that we didn't both want the same thing, but were too afraid to risk it. That thermos I brought tonight, with the soup inside, is the same one I used in college. It's more than a container. It's a quiet thread tying all those years of almosts to now. And maybe that's why it hurts so much when Jonah turns away from it, from me. Because after all this time, I still want to be seen. And he still doesn't know how to look. The TV hums softly in the background, a cold reminder of how far we still are from saying what we both need to say. I keep watching him, waiting for the moment we break the silence. But it's not here yet. Not tonight. I stood by the vending machine, the cold hum buzzing low, and held the coffee cup like it was a weight pressing down on my palm. Not that I wanted to drink it. It was just another thing left untouched, like so many other moments with him. Coffee, the thermos, words I never said. If Jonah didn't understand the thermos, the memory wrapped inside that chipped lid and dented steel, what else hadn't he seen? What else had I been holding out, waiting for him to notice? The soup was a quiet thing, something I thought only he would get. But maybe that was the problem. He didn't get it. Not really. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. That the small things, the way I watched him in the soft light, the way I carried the weight of those years in my hands, would mean something. But he smiled, made a joke, and turned away like the moment was no more than background noise. And that's when it hit me. Not sadness exactly, not just that. Frustration. Anger, even. At myself for hoping. At the silence we both kept pretending didn't exist. At the way I always shrink back before I can be seen. He'll never see me that way. Not the way I want. Not the way I need. I folded my hands around the cup, staring at the pale swirl of cream I didn't add. The hospital's fluorescent lights flickered overhead, too bright, too cold, like the space between us, growing wider even while we're sitting in the same room. The coffee was bitter. I wasn't even thirsty. But still, I clung to the quiet hope that maybe one day he might look up and really see me. Or maybe I'd have to stop waiting for that. Maybe I'd have to stop waiting for him. And that scared me more than anything else, because love, real love, is messy and loud and terrifying. And maybe I'm just not brave enough. I took one last breath, turned away from the machine, and walked back. The silence in the room had gotten colder while I was gone. I wasn't really looking for it, just scrolling through my phone while the coffee cooled in my hand, the one I didn't want to drink like every other cup lately. And then a message popped up from Mia, our mutual friend, casual but loaded. Hey, did you know Jonah's out tonight? New guy. Looks nice. I tapped the link without thinking. Photos, smiles, laughter. Easy, effortless. Jonah leaning in, eyes bright, the kind of brightness that wasn't for me. The pictures blurred together. I kept scrolling, even though every image felt like a small cut, sharp and immediate. They looked like they belonged to a world I wasn't part of anymore, or maybe never was. I paused on one where Jonah's hand brushed the other guy's arm, the kind of touch I'd waited years to give him, but never dared. My fingers hovered over the screen, but I didn't swipe away. Instead, I put the phone down. There was a coldness in the room, different from the hospital's sterile chill, a distance that had nothing to do with walls or monitors. I realized this wasn't just about jealousy or hurt. It was something older, something I couldn't name without feeling ridiculous. Longing, like a word I'd swallowed whole and never learned how to say out loud. The thermos sat on the counter behind me, empty, silent, a quiet ghost of the care I tried to give. And maybe, for the first time, I wondered if I'd been fooling myself all along. If Jonah's life was moving forward and I wasn't invited, what did that mean for me, for us? But I didn't reach for the phone again. I just stood there, holding on to the quiet ache, trying not to breathe too loudly in a room that suddenly felt too big for one. Because maybe some things aren't meant to be shared, not yet, not like this. And maybe love, or whatever this was still waiting for its moment, somewhere between the silence and the space Jonah filled without me. I wiped the counter again, the cloth rough against the chipped edge near the sink. One swipe, then another. I didn't care that it was already clean. The rhythm helped, steady, controlled. Jonah was sitting on the couch, leaning back with that faint half smile he always wore when he wanted to seem casual. Like nothing was hanging between us. Like he didn't know. Like he wasn't watching me the way he always did. He said, "So there's someone I'm seeing." Just like that. Light, like it was no big deal. I smiled, too quick, too sharp. Laughed a little, but it felt hollow in my chest. "Cool," I said. "Good for you." He watched me then, but didn't say more. Maybe he was testing. Maybe he wanted to see if I'd crack. I didn't. I kept wiping. My hands shook just a little. That was the truth. We sat in the same room, but the air was colder now. Like the hospital room all over again, except this time the machines weren't beeping. Just silence filling the space between us. I thought about the photos I'd seen, him smiling, laughing with someone else, the way the light hit their faces, easy and bright. I didn't ask, didn't mention it, pretended it didn't sting. Jonah's eyes flicked away, and I caught that, the quiet weight of not saying what we both felt but refused to name. "I'm fine," I said too often. But I wasn't. Not really. And maybe that was the cruelest part, how good we'd gotten at pretending. The cloth went over the counter again. One swipe. Two. My hands weren't steady, but the lie was strong. For now. The morning light was weak and pale through the half-closed blinds, barely warming the cold hospital room. Jonah sat opposite me at the small table, his hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug, steam curling up and fading into the quiet. We didn't say anything about the date. Or the thermos. I kept my eyes on the cracked shell of the egg on my plate, watching the yolk slowly break and seep out like something too fragile to hold. It reminded me of us, what we had, or what we might have had, leaking away in silence. The clink of spoons against bowls was loud in the emptiness. The hum of the fridge filled the spaces between us. There was nothing to fill the silence. No jokes, no sideways glances, just the weight of words we couldn't bring ourselves to say. Jonah's eyes flicked to mine for a second, maybe searching, but then he looked away. I caught the way his fingers folded the napkin with deliberate care, like it was the only thing he could control. I wanted to reach across the table and stop him, but I didn't. I sipped my coffee, bitter and black, tasting the afterburn of last night's laughter that didn't reach my eyes. The crack in my chest was there, raw and steady. I wanted to say something, anything. But all I managed was a breath that caught and didn't let go. The moment stretched, but neither of us tried to fill it. We were still together, yes. Still in the same room, sharing a breakfast no one really wanted. But the space between us was colder, deeper. It felt like waiting for something to break, or maybe for something to finally be said. I glanced at the thermos sitting on the windowsill, the quiet witness to everything we were too scared to face. The warmth inside it had long since faded, just like the hope I was trying to hold on to. And for now, that was all we had. Jonah's roommate had left hours ago. The nurse came by once to remind me visiting hours were over. But I just smiled and said I wasn't going anywhere. The TV hummed quietly in the corner, the kind of static noise that's almost comforting, like white noise for a restless mind. Jonah lay still, eyes shut tight, maybe really asleep or maybe just pretending. His chest rose and fell slow and steady, like he was trying hard to convince the room himself that everything was okay. I sat in the dark, the only light coming from the glow of the monitor in the city outside the window, muted and far away. I wanted to leave, to go back to the normal, safe spaces where words didn't get tangled up in fear and silence. But I couldn't. Not yet. I traced the rim of the paper cup, fingers cold and restless. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, or if I was waiting at all. Just staying. It was something. Maybe the first thing I'd done that felt like love without hiding behind jokes or distance. I thought about the thermos, sitting empty on the tray. The memory of the soup, warm and messy, like the way I wished things could be between us. Messy, real, unfinished. The silence wasn't empty. It was thick with all the things we couldn't say. It stretched between us like a thread, thin but holding us close in its own way. I leaned back in the chair, watching Jonah pretend not to notice me. Maybe pretending was easier, but I stayed because sometimes staying was the most honest thing you could do. And tonight, that had to be enough. I sat there in the dark, watching the slow rise and fall of Jonah's chest. His breathing was steady, but the tightness in my own chest didn't ease. The hospital TV droned on with static, filling the silence with something softer than the beeping monitors. He was pretending to sleep, or maybe actually asleep. Either way, his eyes stayed shut like he was avoiding me, or maybe just hiding from the moment. I didn't know which was worse. The words I'd been holding in my throat slipped out before I could stop them. Quiet, almost a whisper, because I wasn't sure I was ready to say them, because maybe he wasn't ready to hear. I don't want to wait until I'm scared again to say something real. The room swallowed my voice. No response, no rustling, no sigh, just the soft, steady sound of Jonah's breathing and the distant hum of the city outside the window. I wasn't confessing. Not yet. I wasn't even sure I was confessing at all. It was just the truth I'd been circling for months, maybe years. The fear that I'd let too much time pass before I let myself be seen. My voice cracked at the end, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to hide anymore. Not tonight. I glanced at his hand resting limp on the blanket. I wanted to reach out to touch him, but I stayed still. I didn't want to break the fragile peace with something too much, too soon. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, but it wasn't cold. It was full of everything we'd left unsaid. I leaned back against the chair, the quiet settling over me like a fragile truce, and for the first time I didn't feel completely alone. I barely breathed after I said it. The words hung there, heavy and trembling in the dark, like they might shatter the quiet if I dared to hope. Jonah didn't say a thing. I thought maybe he was asleep. Maybe pretending. But then, slow and careful, his hand moved. Just a whisper of motion across the sterile hospital sheets. He reached over, fingers grazing mine like they weren't sure if they belonged there. He didn't squeeze, didn't hold, just rested his hand lightly on mine like he was anchoring something fragile. I wanted to jerk away. Wanted to pull back like I always did, but I didn't. That small touch, more breath than pressure, was everything. It said, I heard you. I'm here. I'm scared too. The room felt warmer, even though the hospital chill didn't leave. I watched his face, peaceful now, eyes closed. No words came. Maybe none were needed. It was enough. There was no grand confession, no sudden rush of feeling, just this quiet moment suspended between us. I remembered the thermos from college, how I'd made that soup for him, how he'd called it magic, like it held more than food. This was magic too, soft and slow and real. For the first time, it wasn't just me hoping. He was there, in the same fragile space, holding on. The city murmured outside, muffled and distant, and his hand stayed steady and light, like a promise we didn't have to say aloud yet. I swallowed down the lump in my throat. Maybe love wasn't a leap. Maybe it was this small, brave reaching out, and maybe, just maybe, it was enough to start. The morning light was thin, slipping past the hospital blinds like it wasn't sure it belonged. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and something else, something softer, like old paper or quiet hope. Jonah was still asleep, or maybe just pretending. His breath was steady, not rushed. I sat beside him, my hands tangled in the sleeve of my jacket, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. I reached for the plastic water cup on the bedside table, the one I'd filled before dawn. I hesitated for a second, then lifted it toward him. Our fingers brushed, just a flicker, a touch that didn't pull away. The silence between us didn't scream like it used to. It felt like a soft thread tying us together, fragile but real. I poured the water slowly, careful not to spill, careful not to break whatever was shifting. Jonah's eyes stayed closed, but I saw his hand twitch just a little as it rested on the bed. The napkin from last night sat crumpled on the tray. The thermos was gone now, but the memory of it lingered, like a secret code we both understood, even if we didn't say it out loud. I wanted to reach out again, but instead, I just watched, listened to the quiet that wasn't emptiness anymore. Everything felt different now, not because we said anything new, but because something inside me had finally stopped holding its breath. He hadn't pulled away. Not this time. Maybe that was enough for now. I didn't need words. Not yet. Just this moment. Just this. The day stretched out in that slow, heavy way mornings do when everything feels paused between breaths. I kept replaying it, the way Jonah's hand brushed mine just for a second, but long enough to make my skin tingle. Was it a thank you or a goodbye? Maybe he wasn't even awake, just pretending to be asleep like he always does when things get too real. I didn't ask. I couldn't. The words caught in my throat, tangled with the doubt I was trying to shove down all morning. At one point, I found myself tracing the rim of his glass with a shaky finger, just like I did last night when I poured his water. The same hesitation, half hope, half fear, settled in my chest. That simple touch, his fingers resting lightly on mine, felt like a question without an answer. Or maybe it was the answer, but I didn't have the courage to read it right. Every time I caught his glance, half-lidded, tired, I wondered if he saw me. Not just the friend who brought soup or sat silently in the hospital room, but the part of me that had been holding its breath for years. I wanted to reach out again to break the silence, but my voice felt brittle. So I stayed quiet, letting the day pass with that same fragile weight between us. Still, something was different. The distance didn't feel as sharp. The silence wasn't a wall anymore. Maybe it was a doorway. I don't know what comes next. I only know I'm not turning away this time. And somehow that's enough. I came back that evening before the sun was quite gone. The hospital quieter now, less machine, more waiting. The same room, but Jonah was sitting up this time, his back against the pillows, eyes half-lidded like he was pretending to rest. He didn't say anything about the night before, about the shaky words I'd barely breathed out, or the silence that followed. No mention of the way his hand had stayed just long enough to feel like it belonged there. Nothing. But then he got up, slow and careful, and went to the small counter by the window. His fingers moved around the kettle with a kind of familiar precision. I didn't say a word. I just watched. He made the tea the way I like it. 2 sugars, 1 splash of cream. No fuss, no big deal, just that quiet gesture. He brought it back and set the mug down in front of me like he was handing over something sacred, even if he didn't look up. I took the cup, the warmth seeping into my hands, and for a moment, the space between us didn't feel so heavy. It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't an answer. It wasn't even a promise. But it was enough. I looked at him. He was still pretending to be half asleep, or maybe just afraid to wake up to everything that had shifted between us. And in that silence, with the steam rising between us, I felt it. The smallest thread of something real, fragile but steady, weaving us closer again. No words were needed. Not yet. Just the tea, the quiet, the way he made it, like he always has. Like he was saying, without saying it at all, I'm still here. It started with a fever and a midterm paper I hadn't started. I was 21, stubborn, and thought I could sweat it out with a bottle of Gatorade and a space heater. Jonah showed up uninvited. Just walked into my dorm like he always did, like he had a right to. Said I sounded like a dying radiator on the phone. I remember trying to laugh. It came out dry and cracked. He didn't say much, just dropped his bag, kicked off his boots, and tossed a blanket over my lap. Then he hovered like he didn't know what to do with his hands. I didn't know what to do with mine either. He made soup in the communal microwave, canned stuff, too much pepper, tasted like metal and comfort. We watched Finding Nemo and then Ocean's 11. He sat on the floor with his back against the bed frame, close enough that I could feel his body heat through the mattress springs. He stayed until morning. I never asked him to. He never asked if he could. He just was there. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I woke up from a fever dream, sweaty, tangled in sheets, and he was still there. Half asleep, hoodie pulled over his face, but I could see his hand resting near mine on the edge of the bed. Not touching. Just close enough. I didn't reach out. I should have. God, I should have. Because now, years later, sitting beside him in this 2-white hospital room, I realized something I didn't then. Jonah's always loved like this. Not loudly, not with speeches or certainty, but by staying, even when I couldn't ask for it, even when I didn't know that's what it was. And I think maybe this has never been unrequited. Maybe I've just been waiting for a kind of love that was already happening, just quietly. The same way it is now. I was halfway through resizing a client's logo for the 3rd time when the door clicked open. I didn't look up at first, figured it was Jenna coming back from her smoke break, or maybe the delivery guy with someone else's order. Then I heard it, his voice. Didn't know if you'd eaten. Simple. Quiet, like he was asking me if the printer was working. But when I looked up, Jonah was standing there, in my doorway, with a brown paper bag crumpled in his hand like he'd folded it too many times on the way over. I blinked. Twice. He didn't move, just gave this half shrug like maybe this was a mistake. Like maybe I could pretend not to see him and we'd both be off the hook. But he stayed. I reached for the bag. My fingers brushed his. He didn't pull away. Inside, a sandwich, turkey, no mayo, an apple, a bottle of that weird ginger lemonade I always buy when I'm sick. He remembered. No note, no jokes, no apology for showing up unannounced. Just food. Like he used to when I was too hungover in college to feed myself. Like I did for him in the hospital. I nodded, not really at him, more at the gesture. He nodded back. That was it. And then he left. Didn't stay to talk, didn't ask how I was. He just came and fed me. And left. And the weirdest part was, I felt full. Not from the sandwich. I didn't even open it yet. But from the way his silence didn't feel like distance this time. It felt like presence. Like maybe he heard what I had hospital room, and this was his way of answering. Quiet, steady, like always. Only now, I think I'm starting to understand what he means when he doesn't say anything. And yeah, maybe I'm terrified I'm reading too much into it. But the bag's still warm in my hands. And I haven't let go. We weren't really watching the movie. It was something we'd seen before, some action thing Jonah liked, all noise and fake tension. The kind of thing you didn't need to pay attention to, which worked because neither of us was. The couch was too small, or maybe we were just sitting too close. Either way, our arms touched. Not by accident. Not really. He could have shifted. So could I. But we didn't. The contact was nothing, technically. Just elbow to elbow. Warm skin through soft cotton, but it hummed, like standing near a speaker turned low, not loud enough to call attention, but enough to feel it in your chest. I tried not to breathe weird or move or exist too much. I told myself it was just space, just comfort, but I couldn't stop noticing how still he was, like he didn't want to break it either. Outside, a siren passed, distant. On screen, someone yelled. Jonah didn't laugh like he usually would. Didn't shift to grab the remote or get up for a drink. He just stayed close, and maybe it wasn't a big deal, maybe it was nothing. But it felt like a reply, not the kind you speak, the kind you offer in stillness, in proximity, in permission. I didn't flinch. That was new. The night we touched hands in the hospital, I thought maybe it was a one-time thing, a kindness, a comfort in the dark. But this was daylight. This was a couch. This was something that didn't need fear to justify it. I didn't lean in. I didn't move closer. But I didn't move away. And neither did he. The space between us stayed warm, quiet, full. And that somehow was louder than anything he could have said. It got colder when the credits rolled, not only just that creeping kind of cold that settles into the corners of your clothes when you've been still too long. I thought about reaching for the blanket folded at the edge of the couch, but didn't move. Jonah did. He didn't say anything, just stood, grabbed the navy throw from the armchair, and sat back down. Then, without looking at me, he lifted one side and tossed it across my lap like it was nothing. But it was something. God, it was something. The fabric hit my leg with a soft weight. Warm from his hands, familiar. He didn't wait for me to adjust it or offer thanks. Just shifted closer, enough that our sides lined up again. His arm brushed mine. Again, we didn't talk. We didn't need to. The blanket stretched between us like a secret we were keeping together. A shared quiet. Not the kind that begged to be filled. The kind that held. I could hear his breathing, steady now, not like before, not like the hospital. That difference sat heavy in my chest. I kept waiting for it to end, for him to pull away, crack a joke, say something offhand that made it all vanish again. But he didn't. He leaned back, settled in. Eyes still on the black screen like the movie hadn't ended. His knee knocked into mine once. Didn't move. Neither did I. I didn't even pretend to watch the screen. I watched the way his fingers curled around the blanket's edge. I watched the place where his foot nearly touched mine. It was nothing. It was everything. I thought about the hospital, about how his hand had found mine without words, how this quiet shared softness was maybe the loudest thing he'd ever said. Maybe this is what it looks like when someone hears you. when they stay. I didn't thank him. I didn't say a word. I just stayed there under the blanket and let it be enough. Jonah was already up when I opened my eyes. Same hospital room, same thin light filtering through the blinds, but it felt warmer somehow. Less like a waiting room for bad news and more like something lived in, like maybe we were allowed to just be here now. He moved around quietly, like always, but I couldn't stop watching him. The way he rubbed the back of his neck while the coffee brewed, the way he hummed that stupid song from college, the one that got stuck in your head for days. I hadn't heard him hum in weeks, and when he poured 2 mugs instead of 1, I felt it. Not in a dramatic way, just in my chest, like something shifting inside me quietly enough that it almost hurt. He didn't say anything when he handed mine over, just set it down beside me, handle turned the right way like he remembered which hand I used, like it mattered. He didn't look at me when he did it, but he didn't have to. I stared at the steam curling off the top, let my fingers curl around the mug even though it was too hot. I didn't drink it, just held it. Like maybe if I held it long enough, I'd understand what any of this meant. It's never the big things, is it? It's the hum in the morning. The way he didn't ask if I wanted coffee just made it like he knew. The song we used to yell sing in the car with the windows down, the way he left half a packet of sugar on the tray like he remembered I only use half. These aren't declarations, they're habits, muscle memory, maybe even love. But here's the thing. I don't trust myself to know the difference anymore. What if I want too much from this? What if this is just him being kind, not careful? He sat back down in the chair beside me, close, not touching. His thigh brushed mine once and didn't move away. It's nothing. It's everything. I sipped the coffee, burned my tongue a little, didn't care. I thought he was asleep. I'd gotten used to the sound of his breathing, slow, steady, like the machines around him had finally given him permission to rest. The window was cracked open just enough to let the city drift in. Cars, sirens, a dog barking 2 streets away. Background noise for the part where everything quietly shifts. I was curled into the stiff hospital chair, hoodie pulled over my knees, trying to stay small, invisible. But my brain was too loud to sleep. That's when I heard it. Soft. Half caught in a breath. "You scare me." I didn't look at him right away. Thought maybe I'd imagined it, or maybe he was dreaming. But then he added after a beat, but in a good way. And that did something to me. Not a jolt, not a dramatic awakening, just this warmth, slow and sudden, like I'd been bracing for cold water and instead got pulled into something gentle. I turned toward him. He was still staring at the ceiling, not at me. Face unreadable. Maybe that's what made it hit harder, the way he said it like it wasn't meant to be big, like it was just true. He didn't explain it, didn't try to clean it up. I didn't need him to. I nodded, not because I fully understood, but because I felt it. The way I must scare him, not with who I am, but with what I mean to him. The way real things are scarier than pretend ones. We sat like that a long time, not touching, not talking, but it felt closer than anything we'd done before. And I didn't shrink away from it. I stayed. Still, quiet, and somehow okay with the fact that he was finally scared too. The bus sighed when I stepped on, like it was tired too. Seats damp from people, windows already fogging. I picked one in the back, leaned my head against the cool glass. The rain wasn't heavy, just steady, the kind that blurred the world without washing it away. Jonah's thermos sat in my lap, still a little warm. I hadn't realized I was holding it until we were already halfway down Jefferson. I didn't open it, didn't need to, just felt the weight of it. Solid, familiar, like something that had always been mine. Even if I'd forgotten. I thought about last night, his hand on mine, not long, not tight, but it stayed. And I hadn't pulled away, not even a little. I don't think I knew how much that mattered until this morning, when the silence didn't feel empty. Outside, the city passed in soft streaks of gray and green, coffee shops with lights just flickering on, a dog tugging its owner across a wet crosswalk, the world still turning. I used to think love had to be loud, big words, grand gestures, declarations you could hold up like a shield. But maybe it's this, the quiet, the thermos still warm in my bag, his fingers brushing mine and not taking it back, a different kind of noise. I rested my head against the window again, let my eyes close, felt the weight of the thermos shift against my hip. He didn't say I love you, didn't have to, because he stayed, because he let me stay. And I think Maybe I don't need more than that. Not today. It was still raining when I got home. Not hard, just that soft, endless kind that makes everything feel slower. I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door, kicked off my shoes, didn't bother turning on the overhead lights, just let the gray morning settle in around me, quiet, heavy, familiar. The thermos was still warm when I pulled it from my bag. I set it on the counter but didn't walk away, didn't move for a while. Then I made tea, not because I wanted it, just because my hands needed something to do. I sat at the edge of the couch, one leg tucked up under me. Steam curled from the mug, but I didn't drink. I watched it rise, watched it fade. And I thought, I've been waiting, God, for how long? Waiting for some sign it was okay to want more. That it was safe, that I wouldn't scare him off or lose what little I had if I said the wrong thing or too much or anything at all. And all that waiting, it didn't protect me from anything. It just kept me here, still stuck. My eyes drifted to the fridge. There's an old photo taped to the side, one from college, me and Jonah. He's mid-laugh, holding two steaming bowls. I'm flipping him off with a wooden spoon. I remember that day. I remember the soup. I remember how he said it tasted like magic. I don't remember why I stopped making it. My throat went tight, not with sadness exactly, just with knowing. The tea went cold in my hands. I looked toward the bedroom. The side I never sleep on was still made. Crisp, undisturbed, like it was waiting for someone I'd convinced myself would never come. And I said it out loud this time, just into the quiet, just to me. I think I've been standing in the same place for years. It didn't feel like regret. It felt like truth. And maybe that was enough for now. I got to Mara's before the rain did. She opened the door in socks and a hoodie that probably belonged to her girlfriend, hair in a messy bun like always, and said, "You look like you haven't slept." I didn't lie, just stepped inside and said, "Haven't." The kitchen smelled like coffee and eggs, something buttery, familiar. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a chipped mug and pointed at the stool like I was 12 again, and she was making me sit still while she cleaned a scraped knee. I watched her cook. Let the sounds fill the silence. Spatula scraping pan, cupboard closing, coffee dripping behind us. "I kept the thermos," I said after a while. She didn't turn around. Yeah, I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. He drank all of it this time. Mara slid eggs onto two plates and sat across from me. She didn't push, didn't pry, just waited. I looked at the yolk breaking across toast, and something about it made my throat feel tight, like softness was catching in it. "I think I want something real," I said. My voice cracked a little, on real. "Even if it doesn't come easy." She didn't say anything right away, just reached for the salt, passed it to me without looking, like we'd done this dance 100 times. "You've always loved quietly," she said finally. Her voice was soft, steady. "Doesn't mean you didn't love loud." That sat between us like steam off the eggs, warm, quiet, understood. I didn't need her to explain it. I just needed to hear it. And for the first time in a long time, I let someone see that I wanted more. Didn't joke, didn't change the subject, just nodded, let it land, and ate my eggs while they were still warm. We weren't doing anything, really. Just sitting on his couch with a movie playing low in the background. Some old sci-fi flick neither of us were actually watching. The light from the screen blinked across his face in pulses of blue and silver. My hand was tucked under the blanket, not touching his, but not far. Jonah had been quieter than usual since the hospital. Not distant, just cautious, like he didn't want to press too hard on something half-healed. I didn't mind the silence. Not anymore. He shifted beside me. I heard the small breath before he spoke. "You stayed through the worst of it," he said, like he'd been rehearsing it in his head for hours. That scared me more than the hospital did. I turned toward him slowly, but he wasn't looking at me. His eyes were fixed somewhere past the coffee table, somewhere safe. He swallowed. Then, "I've always been good at handling things alone or pretending I am, but you didn't go." I didn't say anything. I could feel my own heart tightening like it was bracing for something. He kept talking, voice lower now. "I thought if someone saw all of it, the mess, the fear, the parts I don't name, they'd leave. Or they'd stay, and I'd owe them something I couldn't give." I looked at him then, really looked. His hands were in his lap, twisting the edge of the blanket between his fingers. "I didn't know what to do with you staying," he said. "That kind of care, it felt like pressure, even if it wasn't." I nodded, though I wasn't sure he could see it. And then I said, almost a whisper, it wasn't. That was it. Not a resolution. Not a breakthrough. But he let the blanket fall from his hands. And when his shoulder brushed mine, just slightly, just enough, he didn't pull back. And neither did I. The movie kept playing. Some robot on screen said something dramatic about saving the world. But we just sat there. Still. Quiet. Closer. The apartment was quiet in that way only a few hours past midnight can be. Too late for the world outside to matter, but too early to sleep. We both found ourselves in the kitchen, drawn by the same restless need to move, to not lie down with our thoughts swirling. Steam curled from the mugs between our hands, soft and slow, a warm rhythm in the silence. The single light above the stove flickered, casting a pale glow that softened Jonah's sharp lines. He leaned against the counter, eyes tracing the faint patterns on the chipped ceramic. Then his voice, low, almost fragile. You still love me, don't you? It wasn't a question. Not really. It was a statement hanging in the air like a breath held too long. I shrugged, feeling the corners of my mouth tug up without thought. Yeah. He looked down, hands folding around his own mug. No response, no pushback, just that quiet acceptance. The kind we both needed but were too tangled in fear to say outright. The silence didn't press. It settled like a shared secret. I watched the steam rise, and I thought about how small moments like this one, or the way he let his hand rest on mine in the hospital, were the kind of love I'd been waiting for, even if I didn't know it yet. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was ours. Messy, uncertain, and real. I wasn't pulling away anymore. Jonah's eyes met mine briefly, soft with something I wanted to hold on to. No promises, no grand declarations, just the steady presence between us. And that was enough. The couch creaked when I shifted my weight. Not loud, but enough to make me freeze, like I might wake him. Jonah had fallen asleep with the blanket half slid off his shoulder, his hand curled loosely on his chest. The tea mug, empty, sat next to his knee. The lamp above us buzzed faintly, its glow soft and yellow, casting slow shadows across the floor. I stood there for a minute, just watching him breathe. That quiet kind of breathing people do when they're fully out, deep, slow, unguarded. He looked younger when he slept, softer. I reached for the blanket, careful not to rustle it too much, and pulled it up over him again. Paused, then tucked it under his arm like I used to do when he'd pass out on my dorm mattress back in undergrad, always too stubborn to admit he was exhausted. Back then, I used to lie awake wondering if he knew. If he felt it too, that ache that lived just under the surface of everything. My hand hovered for a second, then settled on the blanket, just smoothing the edge. Just an excuse to stay close a little longer. He didn't stir, just made this small sound in his throat like a sigh caught halfway. I looked at him, really looked, and something inside me just let go. It's always been you, I whispered. Not for him to hear. Not because I needed a response. Just because it was true. And I wanted to finally let it be true out loud. I didn't expect him to shift, but he did, barely, just enough that his knee bumped mine. I stayed a while longer, sitting cross-legged on the rug, the side of my calf against the couch. The lamp kept humming, his breathing stayed steady, and for once, the silence didn't feel like something I had to fill. I didn't need a name for what this was. Didn't need it to look like anything other than this. Just the blanket, the quiet, and him, still here. The clinic smelled the same, antiseptic and overbrewed coffee. But this time, Jonah's hand brushed mine when we sat down, and he didn't pull away. I didn't say anything about it, didn't need to. He filled out the clipboard like it didn't rattle him anymore. Maybe it still did. Maybe he was just getting better at letting me sit with him through it. Either way, I was here. Not because he asked, because I wanted to be. The nurse called his name. He stood, then hesitated, looked back. You coming? It wasn't a question. I nodded and followed. The room was small, overly lit, too cold, but we'd been in colder. He sat on the crinkly paper sheet, legs swinging like he used to do when we were 17, waiting for me after school. You okay? I asked. He shrugged. Yeah. Then after a second, better with you here. My chest pulled tight in that way it does when something good sneaks in before you're ready. I looked down. My bag was by my foot, the same one I'd carried on the bus that morning after the hospital. Still had the faint scent of broth from the thermos. Jonah saw it too, smiled. You brought it? I nodded. It's empty, I said. I know. He looked at me like he saw something more than a bag and metal and memory. Doesn't matter. We didn't talk much after that. The doctor came in, ran through the numbers, said things looked stable, said to keep monitoring, but stable was a word I'd take. Back in the car, Jonah rolled down the window. The wind smelled like late summer. He reached over and took the bag from me, held it for a beat. Then, quietly, "You still make the soup?" I looked at him. "You still want it?" He didn't answer, just nodded. Once. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't some sweeping cinematic moment, but it was real, and it felt like something beginning. The train rocked slightly beneath me, that low hum rising up through my shoes. My fingers were still curled in the pocket of my jacket, holding the receipt from Jonah's appointment like it meant something. I guess it did. I didn't throw it out. It had been quiet since I dropped him off. Not cold, not weird, just quiet. We were better at that now, sitting with space, letting it breathe. I didn't expect him to text. He never used to after appointments. Just went home. Curled in on himself, shut the door. I used to tell myself that was fine, that I didn't need to know the details. I used to lie to myself a lot. The train rattled. Someone got off at the next stop. A couple, laughing. I looked away. Then buzz, pocket vibration, one short, sharp jolt. Jonah. Still breathing. Still here. That's it. 3 words. I stared at it like it was a map I'd been trying to read for years and only now realized was written in a language I already knew. Still breathing. Still here. Still him. Still us. I didn't answer right away. Didn't need to. He wasn't asking for anything. He was just telling me, I'm still in this. With you. And maybe I used to think love had to be said out loud, had to be big, grand, certain. But this quiet check-in, this was everything. I leaned back against the window, the rain tapping soft at the glass. The weight in my chest wasn't panic this time. It was something slower, warmer, like settling into a chair that's finally shaped to you. I pulled my hand from my pocket. The crumpled paper slipped free. Didn't catch it, let it fall, and texted back, "Okay, me too." Then I closed my eyes, let the silence stretch, not between us, around us, and for the first time in a long time I didn't feel alone inside it. I didn't mean to notice it. I was just grabbing my charger from the floor beside Jonah's bed, fingers grazing across carpet and cords, when I saw it, tucked halfway behind a book, like it had always been there. The thermos. Not mine. Not the old one from college with the chipped handle and sticker residue. This one was new, sleek, same brand though, same shape, same quiet intention. I stared at it for longer than I meant to. It hadn't been there last week, or the week before that. I would have seen it. I'm always the one who makes the tea when we stay up too late talking like we're still 20 and invincible. Always the one who picks up his empty mugs and forgets to be subtle about it. But this was deliberate. He hadn't said anything. Jonah never does when it matters most. He just placed it there, on his side of the bed, and left it like a note I was supposed to find. I sat down on the edge of the mattress, phone charger dangling from my hand, suddenly unsure of what to do with my breath, or my heart, because I knew what it meant. It wasn't about tea, or the weather turning cold. It was about memory. The way something small, warm, had been handed to him when he was scared, the way he'd accepted it finally without pushing it away, the way it had stayed with him. Now it was staying with me. He walked in a few minutes later, sleepy-eyed, carrying a folded blanket we wouldn't need. Didn't look at the thermos. Didn't explain. Just set the blanket down, rubbed at his jaw, and said, "You want tea?" I nodded. He handed me my usual mug. I took it, and when I turned back toward the bed, the thermos was still there. Steady, waiting. Just like him. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. But I made sure it was the first thing I packed when I left the next morning. The fridge made that soft hum I always forgot about until I was standing in front of it. That hum had been there through late-night beers, takeout boxes, cartons of oat milk with my name sharpied on them like a joke. Back when we were just pretending time didn't move. But now it was quieter. Or maybe I was. I opened the door, reaching for something cold, not expecting anything different. And there it was, a new thermos. Same brand, same worn steel color. Still had the sticker half peeled on the bottom like the ones from college. I didn't touch it, just stared. Behind me, I heard Jonah set something down on the counter, a mug maybe. I didn't turn around. "You can leave one here too," he said. Just that. Soft. Not careful. Not like he was afraid I'd bolt. Just like he meant it. I closed the fridge slowly, hands still half raised like I wasn't sure if I'd imagined it. The thermos sat between a jar of pickles and some leftover curry, like it belonged there. Like I did. I turned. He didn't look at me, just kept stirring something on the stove like it wasn't anything. But his hand brushed the counter twice, that thing he does when he's trying not to fidget. So I said, "Yeah, okay," and walked over. Stood next to him. Close, but not touching. The kitchen smelled like garlic and warm rice. He handed me a spoon without looking. "Tell me if it needs more salt." I took it, tasted it, didn't answer right away. The silence didn't feel like it used to, like a wall. Now it felt like a pause, like room. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time I let the warmth settle. Didn't fight it, didn't hide from it. I just said, "It's good," and meant more than the food. He didn't smile, but he didn't have to. We stood there, the fridge still humming behind us. 2 mugs on the counter, and now 2 thermoses, just in case. The thermos was in the fridge. Same shelf, same angle. It didn't feel like a question anymore. Jonah had said it lightly, like it was nothing. Thought you might want to leave one here too. But it landed different. It landed right. Now I was standing in his kitchen with the soft hum of the fridge behind me, watching the light settle across the countertop like it belonged there. Like I did too, and I didn't flinch. I used to. Every time something felt too close, too easy, too good, I'd start looking for exits. I told myself I was just cautious, practical, guarded maybe, but for good reason. But the truth? I was scared of being seen, of needing, of someone knowing exactly what I wanted and still leaving anyway. But this wasn't a grand reveal. It was a fridge door, a quiet morning, a matching thermos, a place for me to stay, not visit. Jonah padded in barefoot, still half asleep, hair sticking up in 6 directions. He glanced at the fridge, then at me. No smile, no expectation, just presence, and that was enough. "Coffee?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. I nodded. He poured. I watched. And for the first time in years, I didn't brace myself, didn't wait for the moment to dissolve or slip away, because it wasn't built on some fragile, breathless hope. It was this: coffee in mismatched mugs, thermos on the shelf, quiet between us, full, not empty. I didn't need to be loud about it, didn't need a label or a map or a script. All I needed was this feeling in my chest, like my ribs weren't armor anymore, like needing him wasn't something I had to apologize for. Jonah passed me my mug. Our fingers brushed, neither of us pulled back, and somewhere between that touch and the steam rising between us, I realized I wasn't scared anymore. Not of staying, not of loving him. Not even of being loved back. It wasn't a big deal. Just a pharmacy run. Jonah needed refills. I needed toothpaste. We parked 2 blocks down because the lot was full and the sky was starting to spit rain. He didn't grab an umbrella. I didn't offer mine. It was habit by now, the quiet shoulder-to-shoulder walk. But today felt different. Not because of the weather, not because of what we were doing, but because halfway to the entrance, without looking at me, Jonah reached over and took my hand. Just reached. No warning, no big breath, just skin against skin. Calloused fingers wrapping around mine like he'd done it before and knew it would fit. And I didn't flinch. That surprised me more than anything. A few months ago, I would have panicked, scanned the sidewalk for who might be watching, dropped his hand under the weight of being seen. But today, I let it stay. Let him stay. His thumb brushed against mine once, slow. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. Inside, the pharmacist greeted him by name. He joked about finally beating the automatic refill system. I grabbed a travel-size lotion off the shelf just to have something in my other hand. We walked out the same way, side by side. His hand still in mine. It wasn't romantic, not in the movie way. No kiss in the rain, no dramatic spinning camera. But it was everything, because he didn't let go. Not when we crossed the street. Not when someone passed us and glanced curious. Not even when we reached the car. And I didn't want him to. We sat there for a minute before starting the engine. He looked over. "You okay?" I nodded, because I was. Not floating. Not fireworks. Just full. Like something quiet had finally settled in my chest. His hand rested on the console. Mine stayed beside it. Close enough to touch. Close enough to choose it again. And I did. Jonah's kitchen smelled like cinnamon and something faintly smoky. Maybe the coffee he'd forgotten on the stove. I was leaning against the counter, absently tracing the rim of the new thermos he'd left there earlier. It was the same one, same shape, but different somehow. Like it held a promise instead of just soup. He was sitting at the table, fingers tapping a slow rhythm on the wood. The silence between us wasn't heavy, just full, like waiting for something to be said without forcing it. Finally, Jonah broke it. "So," he said, voice quieter than usual, "we're not just best friends anymore, are we?" The question wasn't a challenge or an accusation. It was soft, like he was naming something we both felt but hadn't said out loud. I swallowed, felt the words gathering in my throat. It wasn't a yes or no kind of thing anymore. It was this messy, real thing. "No," I said, barely a whisper. "Not just best friends." He smiled then, small and a little uncertain, like he was still figuring out what that meant too. We didn't need to explain. No grand speeches, no sudden declarations, just that quiet understanding that the space between us had shifted, had room now for something more complicated, something steadier. I reached out and his hand found mine like it belonged there. Warm, steady, familiar, but different. Jonah's eyes caught mine, and for a moment everything settled. No fear, no questions. Just this quiet hope. "I'm glad," he said softly. "Me too," and that was enough. I'm standing in Jonah's kitchen again. Same space where I left my old life. The quiet rhythms of us waiting to be rewritten. The light is softer now, warmer somehow. There's a calm here I didn't expect. Jonah hands me the thermos, the one I left behind weeks ago, without a word, just slides it across the counter like it's always belonged there. His fingers brush mine for a moment. Nothing flashy, no fireworks. Just steady. It's funny how something so small can feel like the whole world shifting under your feet. I catch the faint smell of the soup I used to make for him, that ridiculous magic recipe from college. And suddenly, the years of silence, the walls we built, don't feel so heavy anymore. I glance at him. He's watching me, but not in that guarded way he used to. It's softer, open, like he's letting me in without needing to explain or fix everything. I don't say anything either. No big confessions, no rehearsed lines, just the way the space between us feels full without rushing to fill it with words. I want to tell him that I've always needed him, that the thought of losing him once squeezed the air from my lungs. But now, needing him doesn't scare me anymore. It's not a weight or a risk. It's something steady I choose to carry. Love isn't a blaze lighting up the night sky. It's this, quiet and constant, like the hum of a familiar song that never quite leaves you. We stand there, thermos between us, 2 mugs waiting to be filled, a breath passes, a glance, and I know, this is enough for now. Maybe, finally, that's what love really looks like. I didn't realize how much I needed him until the monitors started beeping. Now I know, I've always needed him, but needing him doesn't scare me anymore. Please subscribe.